What's up, y'all? This is DJ Esquire coming to you from a padded cell, waiting for a straight jacket, maybe. No, I'm just kidding. It's my podcast studio, and want to welcome you guys to tonight's workshop. Definitely thank you guys for checking in. Tonight, we're going to talk about beat juggling and go over some of the routines that I've created through my battling career, and just kind of give you guys some background stories and psychology around what I was thinking about when I came up with some of the more fun routines that I've been known for throughout the years. So definitely thanks for taking the time to check this out. And first off, I got to thank Electronic Music Collective for allowing me the space to talk to you guys tonight. If you guys are first timers, I'm a first timer too, so it's okay. Don't be shy. Welcome. And if you don't know about Electronic Music Collective, it is a DJ and music production school based in New York City and also online. And, we cater to all DJ types and all music production types. So if you're brand new to the industry and trying to dip your toes in, or if you've been in the industry and want to, sharpen up your skills, learn something new, talk to other DJs and producers in your industry, then definitely check out the Electronic Music Collective. We have some great instructors and mentors here that do all different types of DJing and production. So definitely is a great place to check out and, sharpen up your skills a bit. So you can check us out at electronicmusiccollective.com and, check out the classes that we offer. And if there's something specific that you want to work on, you can always hit up an instructor for a private lesson. So definitely check that out. And thank you again to Electronic Music Collective for, having me here tonight. So let's dive into the beat juggling world a little bit. And when I think about beat juggling, I think about back when I was first absorbing this battle culture, and we're talking around like the mid to late 90s, where, I would go out and listen to DJs at a battle and just be amazed by what was going on the stage from the beat juggling perspective. Especially, it was just something about hearing DJs just rearrange tracks and kind of making their own tracks, almost like producing live on stage with vinyl. It was, an amazing thing to see, and especially when you would add some of the flair and the, maybe body tricks and some of the other techniques that have developed over the years. It was just something that always appealed to me. It got to a point where when I would go to a battle, I would bring an audio recorder with a cassette tape and just record everything that I was hearing so that I could go back later and listen on my Walkman or listen in my, my car radio with a tape deck and just absorb as much as I could of everything that I was hearing. And it kind of shaped the way that I wanted to create my own routines, because literally all I had to remember all of the great routines that I was listening to during those times was the audio. So I was mainly focused on trying to create something that had a real production like value to it, or, sound like music or sound like an actual song that I've created live on stage. So the one thing about, DJs and battle DJs, turntablists, however you want to call them, is that, everyone is trying to find their own unique style and sound when they're coming up with their routines. And, it gets to a point where you'll hear a song, or you can say the name of a song, and there'll be a DJ's name associated with it based on a routine they created. First person that comes to mind immediately is somebody like DJ Precision from the Executioners, where, if you mention the song Drop It Like It's Hot by Snoop Dogg, his name is going to be associated immediately with that song based on the routine that he created. And when any other DJ tries to create a routine with that song, it's always going to be compared to his, because his was so amazing at the time that nothing could really top it. So you would always find yourself competing with that next routine or that next individual that created something with a song. So I always wanted to stand out a little bit by trying to find music that people wouldn't flip commonly. So the easy thing to do is to try to find the biggest hit that's on the radio and try to flip it. But I always tried to stay away from that. I tried to stay with songs that were familiar to people and had some funky grooves or bass lines and things that I could manipulate, but not necessarily, what's the hottest track that's on the radio, because it's probably what every other DJ is trying to flip at the same time. And I'm not trying to compete with everybody for one song. I'd rather just go out and find my own song, and then I'll be the only person that'll flip it. So just kind of the thought process that I always thought about when I heard other DJs. There'd be a song that'd be attached to them, or certain styles that would be attached to them. Definitely DJs like Mr. B out in California, or even like a new DJ like Delightful out in Bulgaria, is like DJs that are that have developed their own styles and sound very unique and not like anybody else. So when you're thinking about coming up with routines, think about trying to take influence from other DJs, but definitely try to make something that is very unique to yourself. So with that, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of the routines that I created, and I'll start off with probably the routine that most people know me for, and that's utilizing Kiss by Prince. So just a little history on that routine. I was 2001 is probably when I came up with that routine originally, and it stemmed off of me watching a routine from A-Track back in 2000, who used the song Ooh by De La Soul. And there was a lot of techniques that he did in that routine that was just really amazing for that time. And it was something that I always aspired to be. I could never be as, technically proficient as A-Track is, but I wanted to try to flip it and find my own way to make it stand out. So there was a lot of little techniques in his routine that I took from things like, utilizing the up faders, or, dropping tracks on top of each other to kind of create this overall blend as he's going into the next facet of his routine. Just little things here and there that I would like pick out, and I'd be like, oh, that's interesting. Let me try to figure it out this way. That's interesting. Let me try to figure it out this way. And then try to find a song that made the most sense with the techniques that I was trying to emulate and create and make my own. So Prince just worked out to be one of the songs that I used, and made a pretty decent routine with it, I would say. So want to go to a short video of me performing the routine at the DMC Supremacy finals in 2012. Shout out to Etronic, who I was battling and using this routine against, and I've used it against him a few times over the years. So check out the video, enjoy it, and when we come back, I'll jump on the tables and run through how I came up with it. So enjoy. See you in a sec.
Please don't battle anymore.
To show you guys just some of the technique aspects around that routine. So first off, I had to think about, the song itself and what parts of the song I wanted to actually utilize for the routine. So, and this goes for every DJ, whether you're, competing in a battle, trying to come up with routines. You want to know your music very well. So take the time that you need to listen to your songs and figure out the parts of the songs that you want to utilize, either from a mixing standpoint or even a turntablist standpoint of trying to flip a routine. So the first thing I did was just took some time to just listen through the song and just try to find the pieces of the song that made the most sense to try to do something with. And for me, and again, we're talking from a 2001 standpoint, so I'm using vinyl, and I had to run through copies and copies and copies of this song, trying to find those right parts. And to me, it started with the very beginning, the intro of the song. So I just want to run through and let's see that real quick if you don't know the song. And then utilizing the close to the bridge of the song, starting, I'm not going to start it from the actual bridge. I'll talk about that in a sec. But there's a very similar chord to the intro, but there's a bit of a different instrumentation to it. So those two parts, I wanted to try to figure out a way that I could actually institute those two parts. So what I learned from juggling is, you want to first introduce the song and get your audience familiar with what the song is. So as an intro, it would always be to just, play out the very introduction of the song. So, the routine would just usually start with me coming off of another routine or some other form of wordplay into the top of the song so that people would know exactly what song I'm going to use. It give them, a few seconds to get excited about it if they actually like the song, or, just something to familiarize them, the audience with the original structure of the routine before I start to think about breaking it down in a certain way. So to come to find a way to jump to the end of the routine segment. So jumping into that second part. So listening to the song and, just thinking about just common music theory and structure, you always think about dropping on the one or dropping on the first beat. However, the one of that song was not necessarily clean. And I say that from the point that Prince's vocals are overdubbing from another position in the song. So he actually started the vocal verse a little bit earlier. So as opposed to dropping on the one, I actually had to drop a little bit before the one, so that way I could get a clean vocal structure into his set. So at that point, I'm thinking to myself, like, I have to start off the routine with the intro and then jump into that word segment. So I just made sure that, and again, this is from a vinyl standpoint, I had to actually put physical tape on the record at the point where that vocal structure started. So I'd be able to drop it on point, and then just make sure I'm counting off the music theory correctly so that I know that I'm introducing the song in the correct time structure. So boom. So at that point, I'm into the routine. I've cut over from one segment to the next, and now I'm going into the actual pieces of the song that I want to actually juggle. So I'm taking the first essential bar of the chorus right after he says kiss. And then I'm using the first, the introduction of the song with that beat structure as well. So at this point, I'm thinking to myself, like, all right, I want to bounce back and forth between these two pieces, but I want to do it in a very, unique way. So the first thing that I need to think about is like, what side is going to be the lead side of the routine? So in my head, I'm thinking that I want to use the drum, the kick drum on my right side to be the first beat or the one. And then I also want to use the word the as the last beat of the bar phrase. So like the snare or the 4. So no matter what I do on the opposite side, my thought process is I just have to make sure that I start with the first beat on the right side, and I also end with the last beat on the right side, no matter what I do from the opposite side. So it just kind of started where I would just do like just basic looping between the two. And then try to come up with a different way to flip it. So if I was just doing a basic loop, it might sound like this. So, that's, it's fine in the beginning, but it's just really boring at that point. So then I needed to figure out like, all right, let's shorten it up. And then maybe I'll just introduce it at a off time segment. So I'll introduce my the left side a little bit quicker. So that way it'll give me the time to get back to my right side to finish out the bar structure. So, okay. So at that point, I'm like, all right, cool. That sounds pretty good at that point. Again, 2001, I don't know what I'm doing. And then I'm listening to the song, and, when you listen to the song, there's a lot of emptiness, within the song. So you just have kind of like the hard kick and snare. And then, you have a little bit of a guitar in the middle of the song. So I wanted to find a way to kind of fill in the blanks or fill in those gaps. So I literally would just bring the kick drum back in as the right side is playing, and then flip back to the right side to finish off the bar structure. So, you'll start with the kick, introduce the side, but then just use that kind of fill motion to fill in the blanks as the other side is playing. So now I feel like it was, at that point it felt a little bit full. So there's kind of the intro first pattern, and then there's like that little fill pattern that comes in, and I just alternate between the two. I also have to take into consideration how much time I want to have these routines last for. When you're thinking about making your routines, always take into account that you might have a time limit on the battle that you're doing. So it might be like 60 seconds, 90 seconds, or 6 minutes. So, at this point I'm thinking about, somewhere around like the 1 minute range to kind of, fill in the time of these routines. So, from a showcase style, I can, extend these parts, but from a, head battle style, I might have to condense these parts. So I just took those two pieces and just would go back and forth between the two. But then I need to come up with a way to kind of end that particular pattern. Like I just didn't want to end it with just a repeat of the two patterns back and forth. So like I said in the beginning, I'm using the first beat and the fourth beat on my right side. And then what happens is, as the routine kind of evolved, it would shift to where the beats would end up where the fourth beat would be on my left side as opposed to my right side. Because the same way that there is this on the right side, there was the same kind of structure on the position on my left side, but it had the word kiss in it. So it came about that I was going to, at some point, try to transition the snare being on the right side and then come across to the snare being on the left side. So then I came up with just alternating between the first two patterns, but then ending that pattern with the kiss on the left side as opposed to the right side. So now that became the end of that pattern. And then I would come up with ways to kind of like fill it in and make it a little more interesting, you know, adding a body trick to the actual loop, or just using like the up and down fader to chop up the sample as it was playing. You know, I'm not going to do all that, but just something, you know, as I was coming up the routine, it was more focused on the musicality first and then the things that I could add around it later. So at this point, you know, I have that first pattern and then I'm thinking about, all right, what's going to be, and that first pattern is what's commonly known as a setup. So it's just like setting up for the actual reconstruction and breakdown of the track. So now, once I have that set up, I'm thinking, you know, what's going to be the next stage of it. And at this point, it was just me kind of playing around with a lot of different techniques that I saw. And again, what I learned from just listening to the song is that I can use each side to kind of fill the gaps between what was missing in the song. So it basically be kind of like a half beat offset from one side to the next, and just me kind of alternating going through each side, just moving a crossfader back and forth, but always thinking that I'm going to now for the end of the routine, my ending point is going to be the snare that's on the left side as opposed to the snare that was on the right side. So literally from that position, it's just me kind of going back and forth between the two. And you can hear as I'm going back and forth on the fader, there's an offset. So you have like kick, kick, snare, kick, kick, snare, or like some sort of drum pattern like that. And also being able to know that I need to finish off the bar structure on the 4 using the kiss that's there, that I need to actually crawl back upward through this song. So you'll hear so it's just me utilizing the main kick drum here, that snare that's up here, and then coming back to that kick and then finish off with the kiss at the top. And you know, again, that's just a lot of it came trial and error, just kind of going through the motions and just thinking back to, like, you know, some of the patterns that I saw a lot of other DJs do, like utilizing scribbles in the middle and things of that sort, just to give myself the time to go through the song and then pull it back up to the positions that I wanted. So at that point, you know, I'm really happy with the progress at that point. And I think I just like shut down for like maybe like a day or two before coming back to it, because what I wanted to make sure of is that I do the repetition of the routine so much that I don't even have to think about it, that it's really just kind of second nature. So it was literally like a day of me doing that setup pattern just over and over, and then a day of me doing that next pattern before like thinking about and diving into what's going to be the finishing pattern. So at this point, I'm thinking that I want to get down to the end of the track where it's you have like the ad-libbing of Prince kind of soloing out. So let me just get to that. So like that. So I knew like something to be done with that piece of the song. But there was no, there's no beat around it. So it's literally like, all right, if there's no beat to that point, I'm going to have to find a way to create a beat around it. And I was going to use the opposite turntable to kind of fill in the blanks that the other side didn't have, but try to construct it in a way. But I had to get to that part. And again, from a vinyl standpoint, it's not as easy as today where you could just hit a cue point and jump there. I actually had to let the song play out. And this was the point where I could like, give a little bit of energy to the crowd and like, posture up and, just wave a finger or whatever the case may be. So what I did was, knowing that the left side has to play out, I came up with the idea of taking the right side and rewinding it back to the top where the guitar riff is. And literally just filling in the segment of time with the guitar riff and, utilizing my volume fader to just kind of chop it up a little bit and, just give a little bit more energy to the song as it's playing through. So it's not just like, oh, just me standing there letting the song play. It gives it a little more filler to it. So let me jump back. So now once I finish that part, then I'll just let the side play, rewind back to the beginning of the guitar riff, and then just kind of chop it up a little bit as it gets to the ending part of the song. So now at this part, it gets there, and then I do just kind of a baby scratch fade out, just so that it kind of gets people ready to hear the conclusion of the routine or the finality of the routine. So at this point, I'm using this and going back and forth, utilizing the drums on the opposite side, and just finding a way to kind of construct a new beat segment using vocal and the So it came up with a lot of different ways. So essentially I'm just using kick, snare on the right side, just as that fill. And then, it was me having to find a way to kind of end it up. And the way that I thought about it was, let's just kind of speed up that same process, because if I just chopped up the song by itself on the right side, you'd hear. There's a lot of different, you can jump from kick, snare within it, as opposed to just jumping like one kick and one snare. So now I have like the beginning, which is a little bit slower, just kind of building out the routine, building out that ending segment, and then kind of the end that's going to like double it up and make it sound a little bit faster. And then I just started to add little things in between. I noticed that if I would push the record with the vocal, you'd get like a different kind of sound. So as opposed to as opposed to the vocal just speaking, I can just, it almost sounds like I don't know, like a mouse or something. So it just gives it like a little more depth to just that one segment. And then I need to find a way to kind of end it. So knowing what comes next on the song helped out tremendously with how I could end the routine. So I know that on the right side, it's just the intro. So it's just the dry instrumental. But from this point on the left side of the song, it has like the huge blasting guitar riffs. I guess like the bridge of the song. So I knew that I wanted that to be what gets played at the end of the routine because it just has like the most energy and the most fun and funkiness of the song. So I just needed to figure out a way that throughout everything that I'm doing in that final routine, that final pattern, that it has to end on the snare drum right before that guitar riff hits. So again, I would just run through those patterns again, just kind of figuring out, first doing it slow, then kind of doubling it up, adding a little bit of those forwards, and then just finishing with the up fader on that snare drum. And that would then become the routine. So, through all of that, it was just a matter of, all right, I have this routine, just putting all of those pieces together and then thinking about what are the little things I can add to it. So those things became, body tricks, being able to go behind my back and do a few of those patterns. So again, from a 2001 standpoint, it's like, I'm not I'm a tall dude, and going behind my back is not, going under my leg and all that stuff is not the easiest thing for me, just being over 6 feet tall. So I just tried to make the routine a little bit more musical and, simple from that aspect. So that way it gives me the freedom to do a little bit more from a physicality standpoint. So, a lot of the routine, as you see, it's a lot of looping. But there's some timing around the looping. There's some off times around the looping, but there's nothing that's too complex from a looping standpoint that I couldn't just go behind my back for one of the patterns and do it that way. And again, that gives it a little bit of a show to the audience. So I might just introduce, the song as is, and then I'll do a pattern the regular way. And then maybe the second time around, I'll throw a body trick into it. So that way there's something physical that the audience can see and something that they can kind of gravitate to from a eyes standpoint, not just their ears. And then, going down the line and then just listening to all of those little sonic elements, like chopping up the sound with my up fader. Just to give it a little bit of a different feel than just playing it out by itself. So just those little things is what'll kind of break a routine, honestly. It'll, from just sounding like you're playing the song or manipulating the song. And it could just, it could be something as simple as using the volume fader. Nowadays we do have technology. It could be turning a filter knob or, any of the other technological aspects of Serato or whatever DVS you're using that you can add to your routines. Again, for me, back in those days, it was just vinyl. So all I had was, up faders or physical manipulation that I could actually use to build out the routine. And then, again, also thinking about the time frame of the routine. So just making sure that it was under a minute or about a minute, so that way it could fit into the full scope of my 6-minute round. So yeah, that's kind of how the routine came about. So that was the Prince routine. And now I want to talk to you guys about a routine I came with a few years later, using the song Higher by Bauer and Just Blaze and Jay-Z. So a little quick background on that was I came up with the routine just like a couple of weeks after winning the US finals for DMC in 2013. And, that experience was really crazy. And one thing about the DJ battle world that you will learn is that you can have the best performance of your life and you won't even place at a battle. And you can also have one of the worst performances of your life and win the battle. So that's essentially what happened to me. I really was unhappy with my performance, but somehow I came away with the win, and that's just the way it works somehow. So coming off of that win, it was my thought that I needed to have something a little bit newer and fresher for the World Finals. So luckily this song came out maybe like a week or two after the US finals, and I decided to just dip my hand in and try to flip it as well as I could, just to have something a little new and a little fresher going into the World Finals. So what I want to flip to right now is a video of me performing the routine at the DMC World Finals, and then we'll come back and I'll give you a rundown on some of the techniques behind it. So enjoy the vid, and I'll catch you in a sec.
You're now rocking with the best.
One thing I'll say about myself is I never perform a routine clean. So I think I did the routine cleaner in the eliminations than I did in the finals, but whatever. It is what it is. So let's talk about the routine and just some of the ways that I came up with the parts of the set. So again, with the the whole point of listening to the music and just trying to figure out what are the parts of the song that I want to use. This one was pretty simple, where I just wanted to use the very beginning of the song. So for pretty much the bulk of the routine, because there was just so much going on in the beginning of the routine from a musical standpoint that I wanted to try to rearrange. So I literally on both sides just queued up the same point in the song, which is the very beginning. So that's all I'm using, and I'm not even using that much of the song because I probably only use about maybe half of that for the routine. So the beginning of the routine, just like I talked about from the previous routine, is always to try to establish from an ear perspective what the song is. So to give the audience a little bit of a bounce and a feel so that they can get excited about the song before I actually break into the beat juggling portion of the song. So I just make sure that I play a couple of bars of the song on both sides, and then I just transition from one side to the next a little bit differently. So that's the amount of time I wanted to use for the very beginning of the routine, was just those two bars. But then it's just about, how do I want to jump into those 2 bars? I just don't want to play one side and then play the next side. So I came up with the idea of just utilizing a kind of physical pause. Initially I wanted to do like kind of just a platter kill, but I found like doing a platter kill, and when I mean platter kill, I mean like just hitting the start stop on my turntable. But I found hitting the start stop button doesn't give me enough time to get back to where I needed to be. So I use just my physical motion to create kind of a stoppage of the song. So it's like just dragging my hand across the vinyl as I pass a drum. So it just kind of gives the illusion from an audio perspective of a turntable stopping. So then I had that part. I'm like, all right, that's cool. That's cool. But then I need to get back to the very beginning of the track. So as the second side is running, I got the idea of doing some quick kind of offsets, just dropping in like I guess a quarter of a beat in between the two, and then rewinding the platter back to get myself as close back to the one of the song as I could, so that I could jump into the next segment of the routine. So now at that point, as I do that rewind, you'll notice I brought on the left side, I brought that left side back to the very beginning of the track. So that way on the left side, I'm totally queued up at the very beginning of the song. On my right side, I rewind it back, but after I release my left, it's going to give me enough time to actually just bring this back to the beginning so that I can do the next segment of the routine. So literally just that little pullback gave me the split second that I needed after dropping in the first beat on my left side to come back to the right side to drop in the next segment. So again, it was really about how do I want to bring that next segment of the routine in. And I didn't just want to do like a basic loop back and forth. So yeah, that's cool, but you know, it's kind of basic. So anybody can just back and forth. So again, just thinking back to all of the stuff that I was doing before, it involved a lot of off time dropping. So I would just like drop the first beat, but then drop the second one a little bit off time. So just like a quarter of a beat, a quarter of a note faster. So that way I can get into it. And again, even from thinking back to the Prince routine of using the idea of filling, like I still kept that concept over the years up until like, we're talking from a routine made in 01 to a routine made in 2013. So a 12-year difference of just kind of keeping that notion and that signature of myself consistent, where I use those fills to just add in where the beat may not have something, or just to give myself some sort of physical movement that I'm doing. I could do it without the fills, and there's enough going on in the song that would probably just let it just fine. But again, doing those fills give me a little bit more range, and let you know that I'm actually doing something up here. I'm not just letting two songs play. So doing those fills just gives it a little more makes it feel a little more full. So then the next thing is, I do that a couple of times, but I need to find a way to end it. And just trying to, just running through the motions of like what type of patterns I can do. I'm thinking that I want to, again, taking that same kind of concept of the 4 and the 1 landing on the same side. My thought process is to find a way to end with the snare on my left and then come back to the 1 on my left. So, just trial and error, I just came up with just a way to kind of take a 2-beat or 2-beat segment and just flip it so that I can get back to that 4th beat and that 1st beat. So literally just kind of letting the right side play out. I'll use a scribble on one of the sound notes, and then again using that kind of dragging stop. I stop that side, close my fader, my volume fader, and rewind back to the top so that I can drop into the 1st beat of the song again so I can get to the next position of the routine. Originally, I wanted to, again, utilize like a stop function. So I just found as I was trying to construct a routine, hitting stop didn't give me enough time to stop the record, rewind the record, start it up again, and then get into it. There was just a lot of time wasted in between. So just being able to physically kind of make a stop happen and then just easily rewind back with the platter still running, I can just get immediately into my next segment. So at that point, now I'm thinking about what the actual middle of the routine is going to be. And this is where a lot of the kind of use of technology came into play. What I noticed was as I was doing the stop, like that stop motion, and then bringing it back to the beginning of the routine, there's dead air. So I wanted to find a way to kind of, not have it be dead air. And it wasn't going to be me crossing over to the opposite side because I wasn't sure what is going on this side at that point. So there might be just like some weird noise and it might be off time and off structure. So I didn't want that to be the interference. So what I did was actually instituting the use of the echo effect within the actual Rain 62. So I would set the echo effect to 1/2 note. So that way every half note after a sound is played, there would be an echo as it fades away. And then what you would hear is after I do the stop motion, you'd hear that sound, but it would echo out and it would kind of give the appearance of, there's still some sound happening before I get into the next crux of the routine. So you can kind of hear at the end of it, it's like fading out as I'm doing at that point. Once it fades out, I can rewind the record back to the beginning as that sound is being played and jump right into the next segment of my routine. So again, just the little things that I had to discover about the way I wanted the routine to sound. These are things that I didn't have access to from a vinyl standpoint because, in 01 creating prints that didn't exist. So now that I had this machine, I tried to find ways to utilize it to the best capacity that I could for the time being. So now I had that kind of setup. Again, talking about setup patterns, that was the setup pattern, and then now it's a matter of going into what the actual body of the routine is going to be. And it literally was, again, trial and error, just doing some form of looping and just trying to find ways to fill in those notes. And then that's where this segment came up. So now what I noticed at that point is once I came up with that, I was literally just kind of going back and forth on one side to the next. But for the illusion of doing more, I found that I could actually cross my hand over as I was doing that pattern, as opposed to doing it straight up. So I incorporated that kind of crossover just to give it a little more of a physical appeal as I was doing the set. So again, nothing really different that I'm doing. It's just me crossing over my hands, same pattern, but now it's just a little more of a physical aspect to it that I could use to give a little more to the audience as I'm doing the routine. And then adding a little bit more of the technology into it, I found that I wanted to use the loop rolling feature. So on the 62, there's a way to create automatic and manual looping. So I wanted to find a way that I could institute maybe a roll into the set. So just playing around with it, I wanted to find what loop roll made the most sense for me. So I went with a 1/8 of a loop note. So I would set up the 1/8 note and then try it out a couple of times. So at that point, it just gave like a really big sound, as my daughter hates this routine. So she's crying in the background. But so doing that 1/8 it just felt like a really good filler to kind of end the routine with, to extend the pattern with. So I would do that first initial pattern with the flip of the arm and then conclude it with utilizing the loop roll into the routine. And even in that part, I even, again, something from the Prince routine where I was utilizing that pushing, where, it just gave a different sound than just kind of playing the song out. I would just push those sounds. And again, with the echo on top of it, it gave it just like a really big sound and a big reverb type of feel to it. So at this point, I was really happy with the way the routine was coming together, and then just trying to figure out what the next kind of concluding step is going to be. So as I listened through the song, there was the next segment down with that. So I wanted to find a way to kind of use that as the ending of the routine. So again, using that kind of filling type of technique, I just wanted to find the on this side and then use it to fill it in with the that was going on this side. So I'm catching the uhs on the right side, letting the uhs on the left side roll through, and creating like that triple type of sound. But again, I noticed like I can do that routine just going back and forth, moving the fader and the record, or I can do a little more where I can cross my arms over just to give a little more of a physical presence for the audience to see. And then I even threw in utilizing the volume fader to chop up those sounds as I'm going back and forth. So, and it's been a while since I did that. I'm losing my breath. But so yeah, that just gave it a little more of a physical appeal than just kind of moving the fader back and forth on those parts. And then coming towards the end, I tried to find a way to utilize a rewinding sound for the ending segment. So And this even stems back, to the 2000s when I was listening to routines. I heard a lot of DJs that would use like rewinding of their records and getting those sound effects to create their drum patterns. And, I just tried to find a way to kind of utilize that in my own way. So it was just me rewinding the record, like playing the kick on one side, rewinding back to get to the snare on the opposite side, and then doing a lot of fills with my crossfader and my volume fader to fill in the rest. So then once I do that pattern a couple of times, I stop, and then the full end would be me actually doing just a small scratch segment with the sound sample, and then ending with the snare drum at the end. And again, with the fact that the echo was on, it gave a little bit more of a dynamic sound to the cuts I would do and the actual stopping of the routine for the end of the routine. So again, with sound segments, you have to know your limitations in terms of what kind of cuts you can do. So literally I just played around with a lot of cuts and just found that doing flares was the best type of technique that I could do for that sound segment. So then I would do just a couple of flares and then just double up, kind of scribble scratch on the two sounds, and then ending the routine by stopping with the start stop button. And then with that echo effect on trailing, it would lead to the end of the routine, and then I could jump into something else. So let me just run that back, and so you can hear it kind of in full. Something to that effect. So what you didn't see from the world final video is that I actually forgot to turn the echo on during that routine. So there was no echo. I'm pretty sure I got it right in the elimination round, which helped me get to the finals. But with all of the craziness that was going on during the finals, the little things you forget. But, when I do the routine live, I extend it a lot more. I have an entirely another pattern that I've added on to it from the original pattern that I created back in 2013. So over a while, the routine got even longer and fuller. But just from the standpoint of trying to fill in 40 seconds of time just so that it could fit into a 6-minute routine, there was a lot of things that I had to like really cut down and condense. So if it was really quick, you don't really get the full blast of the routine because it was such a short time frame. But I wanted to make sure I hit on a lot of the strongest points that I came up with in the routine. Things like utilizing the echo, utilizing a loop roll, hitting that rewind, and just the little things like, physically stopping the record, things that, you wouldn't normally think about doing from just a vinyl standpoint, because at this point we had a little bit more of the technology in existence. So we had more opportunities to try things and more tools to try things with. So that's how the routine came about. Really happy with it from the 2013 standpoint, and even how long it took to develop it and where it lives today, even in its longer form. So yeah, those are a couple of the routines that I've come up with over the years, the thought process behind them, and a few of the techniques that I came up with to put them all together. Definitely, if you guys are trying to create routines and beat juggles of your own, take note of the music that you're listening to. Try to find something that you really like and that kind of speaks to you from that musical standpoint, and something that you can kind of put that producer hat on and try to flip it in your own way. definitely take note of other DJs that have, created routines in the past, whether you've seen them in DJ battles or on Twitch or wherever you're getting your DJ fix from. Do not bite another DJ's routine. That kind of goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. Don't bite another DJ's routine. Don't steal ideas verbatim from another DJ, but, take note of what they're doing, take influence from it, and, change it, flip it up a little bit, and try to make it a little more your own style. And, maybe you got something that you can actually put out there for a battle or, showcase or whatever you want to do. So with that, I want to say thank you to everybody watching, and a big thank you to Electronic Music Collective for giving me the space and the time to actually talk with you guys. If you guys aren't familiar with Electronic Music Collective, it is a DJ and music production school based out of New York City and also online. We offer classes to students of any skill level. So if you're a new beginning DJ and producer, or somebody who's been in the industry for a while and just want to learn something new or sharpen up something, definitely check out the Electronic Music Collective. We have some great instructors and mentors who have been in this game for a while. They're artists currently now, and love nothing more than sharing this knowledge of our industry with you guys. So definitely go to the website, check it out, electronicmusiccollective.com, and leave us a message, give us a shout, and definitely check it out. So with that, I thank you all again for joining tonight. My name's Esquire, and I'll check you out soon. Peace.